Julia Cheek, CEO of EverlyWell. Welcome to Stanford and to the Industrialist Dilemma.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about the company and what the company is and the products that it delivers today.
Yes, so I am the founder and CEO of EverlyWell. We're based in Austin. We have about 85 employees delivering about $50 million of sales a year at this point. The business is 4 years old, and we have hundreds of thousands of customers where we're changing their lives with lab testing. So I started the company to solve a really simple problem of creating a market for consumers to get access to a variety of lab tests, and that has really grown into 35 different lab tests across different categories like STIs, hormone testing, cardiovascular testing, and the ability to do it from home and have a guided online results experience that actually helps you solve your health problems. So we're changing lives every day, and our mission is really to be affordable and accessible for everyone in America and to change how you view lab testing as part of your everyday health.
So what created the opportunity for EverlyWell to be started now versus maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
It's a great question because I've learned as an entrepreneur that I think timing is so essential to success, and there were actually prior EverlyWells who failed because I think they were too early to market. I really believe that while I started the company because I saw an opportunity with my cohort or persona, so women who had unsolved health issues, what I also saw in the background was this drastically shifting cost landscape in healthcare, and that the prices were still astronomically high between service providers and insurance companies, but insurance companies were covering less and less and less. So those bills were increasingly ending up in the hands of the average person, and I didn't see that changing anytime in the next decade. So I knew EverlyWell wouldn't actually work if it was relying on the average American to suddenly care about getting their cholesterol tested. I knew it would work though if people were suddenly paying with their own dollar, not getting the service that they expected, or not even knowing how much they were going to have to pay at the end of the day. And that, unfortunately, is actually what happened at a really rapid pace over the last 5 years, even faster than I had anticipated it.
So how do you think about what are the next set of tests to offer? How do you think about growing the business and where you go from here?
So we have a really interesting challenge, both creating the culture of EverlyWell and how we think about our product offering, because we're bringing consumer tech and healthcare together. So in a world where if you put a group of doctors together and said, hey, what test do you want to offer? They would probably say, well, we want to offer a CBC panel, we want a flu test, things like that. When you put a group of consumers together, they generally, if you put a Venn diagram on a board, those circles don't overlap. So we really start with, where is the largest consumer demand for a test? Where can we offer that test more affordably than through the traditional medical system? And then where is it accurate and reliable? Because that has to be kind of the foundational criteria. There's some tests we can't offer because using the home method just doesn't work yet. But if we can start with a really high market demand list, then we can start to knock those off. So for example, we're looking at allergy testing. That's a great market for us. It's very overpriced. It's something millions and millions of people need access to. We're looking at additional heart health testing. We're looking at additional cancer screening tests like that we think are becoming more and more common for a consumer to want to pay for.
With things as personal as one's healthcare, one's information, how do you think about privacy and security, especially as a startup in such a critical and important space?
This is, I think, our policy on privacy and security, our position on it in the market that we've been public about, I think has actually really differentiated us. I took a stance a few years ago that we would not sell any data. And I think that that has served us well to enter that space slowly, given what is happening in the public discourse around privacy, both with tech and then of course with things like DNA companies. So we have taken that public stance, which is how we kind of decide principles of our business on who we work with, and we won't work with pharma companies, et cetera. That being said, we also have to uphold that internally. We have to have the best security practices, and sometimes when you're trying to build things quickly and test them, and you don't have a lot of money and you're bootstrapping as an entrepreneur, those things are in tension. So I have found it really hard to think about doing something cheap in healthcare. And so I think, we've raised quite a bit of money. I think that's a direct reflection of saying, okay, there's certain areas where we can test and learn. There's other areas that we have higher standards for table stakes than you would normally have in like another consumer app company. So that's really how we've balanced it. And we're one of the few that is actually HIPAA compliant and Medicare compliant because we work with Humana. So we have to do that very carefully.
How has the healthcare community responded to what you're doing? Who's been supportive, who hasn't been supportive, and how are you navigating that situation?
Yes. My take from when I started the company to now, I think that the traditional medical community has adopted the EverlyWell concept, which I would actually broaden to say consumer-directed healthcare that you then take to your doctor and say, hey, I want you to do something with this. I think that movement has changed with physicians faster than I expected. The reason for that, though, again, and this is what we hear from doctors every day, is because of cost. So when you get an unexpected bill, your patient calls you. And even if you didn't understand that that's what they were going to get billed. And so what we hear physicians tell us is, hey, I love your testing because I can say, this vitamin D test is $99 and not $600 through another lab. And so I think that is shifting. Where I do think we have challenges is this virtual model that I think all of primary care will shift to. And I think that will take a number of years just given the institution of traditional medicine to shift us that way. But it's already happening.
So as you look at the business going forward, what do you think its biggest challenges are over the next 5 to 10 years, and what have been the biggest challenges for you as a leader coming into the healthcare space, but coming at it from an entrepreneurial perspective and point of view?
I think in healthcare at large and for our space in the next decade, I think you'll see a lot of innovation around point of care testing. I think that can be good for EverlyWell if we stay ahead of the innovation and if we partner with and do deals with companies that are much more biotech heavy, that are actually innovating on how do you collect blood, right? How do you have a device that you can read a result on your smartphone? If we don't do that, I think we could be we ourselves as a disruptor will be disrupted, because then we won't have, a mail-off kit is not actually the ultimate innovation, right? You want it in your home and to be able to result right there. So I think that's a challenge we really have to pay attention to. For me as a leader, I never expected, I never even envisioned getting to $1 million in sales. And so as we look at the 100 million mark, the 200 million mark, profitability, I think those things are challenging me to step up every day and say, I'm now a professional scaling CEO. How do I be sure that I'm getting myself out of a new job every 6 months and leveling up my team? And that requires self-discipline, and it requires a lot of self-reflection and honesty with yourself about where you need to fill your gaps.
It's amazing 4 years in about how you've been able to have such a impact on the healthcare business and continuing to do so, riding a lot of the changes that are happening. Julia Cheek, CEO of EverlyWell, thank you so much for coming to Stanford.
Thank you for having me.